Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Also Curious. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a whole lot of different crazy stuff. The SAG strike is still on, the WGA is still on strike. Secret Invasion aired, and well, the that seems to be another reason why the MCU might be in need of a reboot. But to kick things off today, we're going to be talking about the latest Disney ride turned into a movie. And this one's been done once before, but they figured it's been like 20 years, so might as well give it another shot. So let's talk about Haunted Mansion. And then with me today to do that, I have Angelina. How are you doing today?
Hi, good. We're doing well. California is experiencing a massive heat wave, but I've been enjoying it.
Nice. Yeah, I'm like on the East Coast, and we got like the same thing. And I was reading
Yeah.
an article earlier that it looks like most of the continental United States, like 29 states of in the country, seem to have like this heat advisory like this weekend,
Yeah.
and it's very hot. And
I
like
think
I've got
they
the
said it's the
AC on.
hottest July on record.
Yeah. I was reading it. There was an article about that a week ago. I was like, they've already basically said this is like without even seeing the whole month's number, scientists are like, this is the hottest July ever. So, um,
Global warming.
yep. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. I think that's part of the. That's definitely part of it. But you know what's hot as the sun right now? That's the Barbie movie. So before we jump
Mm.
into the haunted mansion, I just wanted to ask you because you had a chance to go see Barbie this week.
Yeah, I
So
finally
what
got to
was that
see
like?
it. I went and saw it with a group of my friends. We dressed up, we got dinner, we went to see Barbie. Um, it was good. I don't know. I don't think it's like I don't know. I guess it's groundbreaking in a lot of different ways, but I didn't view it as being like societally like the most pivotal movie of all time, like some people are
Yeah.
naming it. I definitely think Oppenheimer was a way better movie. Um, I liked it though. I liked it. It was cute. It was good. It spoke to some things. I think it could have gone further in certain areas, and then I think in other areas politically, it just kind of like kept hitting you on the head with the ideas. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it was a good movie. I don't think it was the best movie of the year. I think Oppenheimer was the best movie of the year, but that's just me. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it. But what is so crazy is that people are really so split in the way that they talk about it online. There are people like, I absolutely fucking hated this movie. And there are people that are absolutely like, I love this movie so much. And I'm like, I am Switzerland. I am neither. I am both. I am neither. I am living in the in between. But there are a lot of people that are very, very divided on this movie, but it's breaking records with,
Yeah.
yeah.
It definitely is. I mean, it was insane that it was able to the movie made like 162 million at the domestic box office opening weekend. And then by the time we got to like Thursday or Friday, it was already at like 700 million worldwide, right? So people were at that point, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, all the big outlets, they're like, you know what? This thing is just destined to make $1 billion because it got like three-quarters of the way there in basically less than a week's time.
Mhm.
And now when you look at the numbers for what they're projecting for this second weekend, it's going to make like another 90 million, which is a less than 50% drop from the first weekend. That's insanely good for a movie that started out that high. It's rare to see movies like have that strong of a hold. And while at the same time, like, Oppenheimer is up to like 400 million worldwide. And that movie didn't even cost like, it cost like 100 million to make. It was
Yeah.
very cheap for like, because they didn't have any CGI really. It was all like, practical effects for the most part. So, both of the movies are doing fantastically well. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there is a bit of a division on some parts of Barbie. I still think overall it's overwhelmingly positive for
Mhm.
both films. I agree with you that Oppenheimer is the better movie. I do think there's some political overtones in some areas where it's definitely not very subtle in Barbie, but
Mhm.
it's I still appreciated like all the songs and like the when Ken breaks out into song or like
I'm
how
just
it
Ken.
ends.
Yeah, no, there are definitely
Yeah.
parts of this movie that I'm like, really great. I think it's
Hmm.
like it's a really good movie. It's a really good movie. Well, like fully dimensionally good.
Yes.
I don't think it's the best movie that I've ever seen in my life. Like some people are claiming. I'm like,
Right.
that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's a lot of movies. I mean, you can look at things like Avengers Endgame or like one of
Yeah.
the Harry Potter movies or like any of those really big movies or back like a few years ago when it seemed like every movie was, not every movie, but like every other movie in the summer was making $1 billion. There's a lot of movies out there that just become this cultural phenomenon, and it doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're the best thing ever. It just means that everybody wants to see it and see it again. So I think the fact that it's making so much money it speaks to the watchability of both of these movies, and the
Yeah.
fact that this Barbenheimer phenomenon is so wholly unique that it's still pushing along both films. Like now, I think we were talking about this before the show,
Yeah.
because of Barbenheimer, like, and now we have a Haunted Mansion, Mission Impossible is still there. There's a
It
lot of
was
other good
a
movies.
record-breaking box office weekend, you guys. It
Yeah.
was like this past box office weekend. Well, it doesn't even include today, right?
Well,
So,
it including, so this whole weekend, this is the
yeah,
last weekend in July. It's, I think the numbers are like north of 217 million at the,
yeah,
like the domestic North American box office, which is the best July, weekend of the year, or of ever for
I
July.
think it's of all time, which is
Yeah.
kind of crazy. So yeah, it's still going. I also Margot Robbie projected that this is going to be $1 billion movie, and I feel like it's going to make way more than that. You said Top Gun
Yeah.
made like 1.4.
Yep. And then Super
I
Mario, yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
then
was
Super
it Super
Mario
Mario?
Bros. This year was like 1.35 or something. So Top
Yeah,
Gun is still like Top Gun is slightly more than Super Mario, but Top Gun is from last year, right? So
yeah.
when you look at the highest grossing movie of this year, that's Super Mario Bros. And the second highest is like the Guardians of the Galaxy
I
Volume
feel like
3.
Barbie is going to surpass it
Yeah,
because in
but
2 weeks to almost be at like over
yeah,
$700 million, like
it's
they
already well
only have
past it.
5 million to go. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's only the second weekend. It's probably going to be in theaters for a few more months. I feel like
yeah.
I might honestly go rewatch Barbie because I think there were so many political references and like so many jokes that I feel like I need to watch it one more time to really let it all sink in. Some of the Mattel jokes were pretty funny. I like
Yeah.
you had to laugh at it. Like it was good.
Yeah, and I love Will Ferrell's character.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like watching this movie, like everybody was having fun. It almost felt like a stage play where everybody was in on the joke, and they're
Yeah.
just having fun. It just, there's this earnest like fun to it where every time you thought, oh, they're not gonna go there, oh, but they go there, with like some of the
They're
jokes.
there.
Yeah,
They are
so,
there.
and then like Oppenheimer is such a diametrically opposite movie in terms of how
Oh,
it treats its subject matter, which is, it's a much more serious, much more dramatic, and it's based on real life events, so it's a whole different kind of film. But I think it's rare to see two movies that are so diametrically opposed, and I think that's really working in both of their
mhm.
favors. And yeah, I mean, look, this movie is Barbie is going to already have surpassed Guardians of the Galaxy by midweek of this upcoming, which would be it's only its second week in release. And Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy took months to get to like that 800 some odd
Mhm.
$1 million. So it's already gonna be the second highest movie box office of the year by the time we get to its third weekend. And at that point, everything else is just like trying to catch up to Super Mario and then beyond. And given that Super Mario took months to get to where it got, and it wasn't like as front loaded as Barbie has been. I think that with August looking not that strong comparatively speaking, there's not a lot of big movies in August that are coming out. I think Barbie's got the runway here to just keep
Yeah.
on
To
chugging,
keep
especially if
coasting.
it keeps
Yeah, just
making
like
like
Top Gun did
20
last
million
year.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my friends, when we were going, and one of my friends came into town, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come with us?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'll go see it a second time." And so I feel like it definitely has that sort of complexity that you want to watch it one more time in order to fully understand like everything that's said, in order to like fully like immerse yourself in the experience. And I definitely think it's a movie that is easy to watch twice,
Yes.
three times,
Yes.
versus like Oppenheimer. I need to watch
Yeah.
it again, but I'm gonna wait a couple months. Like, it's one of those things that is so like it's a lot. The subject matter is so
It's very
heavy, and
visceral.
yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
everything, it just like releases all of these emotions, and you need a minute before you can rewatch it. Whereas Barbie, I think, is a little easier on the palate, but complex
Yeah.
enough that you want to watch it again.
I
So
absolutely agree. Yeah.
we shall see. But
Yes.
the Haunted Mansion
The Haunted Mansion, yeah. So this is a movie that's based on a Disney ride at Disneyland, and I think it's also like the Haunted Mansion ride is in a couple of other Disney parks around the world as well. They made a movie on based on this ride in 2003. They spent $19 million. That movie ended up making like 180 million at the box office, so it was just broke even. It was marketed as like Eddie Murphy in Haunted Mansion, that he was like the lead star,
Yeah.
and I still remember having watched that movie many times over the years. I remember it quite well. It's not something that's going to blow your socks off, but it's like a fun movie to watch with your family if you have kids and stuff. It's the kind of movie that if it came out today, it would go directly to Disney Plus. It's just not one of those movies that I think would do very well in theaters today. So Disney decided, well, it's been 20 years, literally, like since 2003 to 2023, and they wanted to give this another try. Now, back when they made the first Haunted Mansion movie, it was the era of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Like that was the flagship Disney franchise. Another franchise based on a ride. They had National Treasure, like those kind of movies. So today you have Marvel and Pixar, and you have the Star Wars stuff. That's what Disney's known for. But they're still, doing the live action remakes. And so here they come with another Haunted Mansion. The cast is great. And I will be honest with it's not the best movie. I could definitely see the reasons why it's gotten the reviews that it's gotten. It's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. It's under 50%, and it's got like a 33 odd $1 million start at the worldwide box office. So it's not very good. Like, what did you think about the movie?
So when I when I actually went to go see Barbie, it was the opening night for the Haunted Mansion, and there was somebody
Mm-hmm.
who legitimately fully dressed up as one of the characters from the first movie. She was like, I think she was playing the bride, but she was wearing like all black, like a black veil, like all black, and she was
Whoa.
playing like the bride from the first movie. Um, it was a lot.
Wow.
They liked it. I don't know. I think it's one of those movies that like what I said with Renfield, right? It's one of those things where you sort of take it or leave it. I think it would have been
Yeah.
better served coming out in October. I think it's a good family favorite. I think the acting was particularly hokey in a way that like
Yeah.
seemed just bad versus like when you went to go see Zoolander, right? Like it's almost the same kind
Yeah.
of humor in a way, but Zoolander was a way better movie.
Like it's
So
like if you're gonna do it way over the top. Like it just didn't feel like it
yeah,
was over the top
like
enough.
they feel like they just like went there and then didn't follow through, and so it just came off
Yeah.
as like, oh,
Right. Like in that
yeah.
sense, I think Danny DeVito was the only actor in this movie who was like, this is a bad movie and this is meant to be really over the top corny, so
I
I'm
think
gonna
he
do my
was
best with
the
it.
highlight of the movie. Like
Right.
the when Danny DeVito
Yep.
literally gets like removed from the ladder, that stuff
Yep.
that was funny. That was good
Yep.
physical comedy. Also, it was so nice to see Danny DeVito in something again. I haven't seen Danny DeVito. I haven't even heard Danny DeVito's like voice other than in is it the what sub commercial is he in right now on the radio?
Oh. Well. There's also like that those commercials play on TV too. I think it's
Oh,
what
I haven't
is
seen
it?
them. Is it
Is it
Jimmy
Jersey Mike?
John's? Oh, it might be
It,
Jersey Mike's.
Jersey.
Yeah,
It might
a
be
sub
Jersey Mike's. Yeah.
above.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's so good to see Danny DeVito back in action. Like he was such a pivotal part of movies
Yeah.
from what we're talking like the 80s to the early 2000s. So it's really nice
Yep.
to see Danny DeVito back. The rest of the actors, obviously Owen Wilson is great. I even
Yeah.
liked, yeah, it's not
He was
his best.
playing himself. Like Owen Wilson was just playing
Owen Wilson
himself in the
always plays
movie.
himself. He
Yeah.
always plays himself. That's who
Mm-hmm.
he is. It's just his acting. That's just like what it is. And so it's one of those, I think like the exact quote I gave you for Renfield was like, this movie is one of those things that you have to take it for what it is and then you
Yeah.
can enjoy it. If you try to compare it to Oppenheimer or Barbie or anything that's really like there's stake in this movie, not for you. This is a good
Yeah.
little family favorite. There are parts of it that are like probably a little spooky.
Yeah.
The graphics are a little scary looking.
There were definitely some moments in this movie where I was like, oh my, they actually made it legitimately scary and creepy at times that I wouldn't
Mhm.
expect walking into this movie as being something that's meant for like a family audience. And
Yeah.
it was definitely more spooky and scary in some places than I remember the original Haunted Mansion movie being. So
It's
it was,
PG-13, so nobody under 13 is really allowed to go see it. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, unless you go with like your parent or something, and like they'll let you in. It's not like rated R where you have to, like it's pretty. But
oh,
like what I felt about this movie was it was a mishmash of a lot of different things. Like for example, like Keith Stanfield does a fantastic job with his role. However, it felt like most of the time he was in an entirely different movie than like Tiffany Haddish's character, for example, because you just had something incredibly cheesy, corny, over the top, and then like what Danny DeVito was doing, and then Rosario Dawson's character is sort of somewhere in the middle, depending on the scene. She's either really over the top or she's like under more understated. And then Lakeith Stanfield has probably the only character in this movie who had a legitimate arc, an emotional arc, but it just felt out of line with everything else, and it just
his
so
I also feel like he was very non-committal in a lot of ways, and I think it was his take on this like acting style.
yeah.
I didn't like it. I wasn't thrilled by it. I was like, yeah, okay. It wasn't over the top and it definitely was out of place. Yeah, I would agree with you
It
wholeheartedly. Yeah, it
yeah,
just
yeah.
felt very like, oh, okay.
It just it because
Good.
it felt like this entire movie was based on like around characters that were very surface level, kind of stereotyped almost in many ways, right?
Yeah.
And then Lakeith Stanfield his character is the only one where we're getting a significant backstory, and we're getting a more fleshed out character and somebody who's trying to, it felt like, give a fuller performance where you're getting the dramatic range, but he's also like very kooky in some scenes. Like there's some parts where like when he first walks into the mansion and his camera is clearly, the battery is not working, so he's
Yeah.
taking all the pictures and stuff. So it just felt like this definitely is the kind of movie that I would have expected to watch in the early 2000s from Disney, and been like, okay, well, that's a Disney movie for you. It's live action Disney, that's not animated, so there's only so much you're gonna get. But today it just definitely feels like, I think one of the reasons why they probably released it in this time of year, because originally this was slated for March of this year, and then Disney shuffled their movie release schedule over the last couple of years due to COVID delays and everything else. They moved it to July, probably not to October, because they figured, hey, let's drop it here. This movie's probably not going to do very well no matter where we drop it, so that by the time Halloween comes, it will be on Disney Plus. And then there's been movies that Disney has come out with recently that have found a second life on Disney Plus, like some movies do on Netflix or TV shows. So they probably figured that's their best
But it's
bet
doing
here.
so badly in
It
theaters right
is.
now. It's like, is it even going to make it to like time wise it launches? It doesn't make sense. Like,
I, d- I
it
don't have
doesn't,
hopes for it.
yeah, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. By the time it comes out on streaming, it's going to be what, September? And so it's going to be a whole month early. It's like, I
Yeah.
guess they could try to delay it for October when people get into their spoopy feelings, but
Hmm.
I don't think this movie is going to last in theaters until the end of
It,
August.
No, well, it's definitely going to be difficult, especially because of everything that's coming out in August, everything that's already out now.
Yeah.
Like you go to the movie theater today, you have Barbie, you have Oppenheimer, you have Haunted Mansion, you have
Mm.
Mission Impossible. You're gonna soon have the Teenage Mutant Ninja
I
Turtles. You're
think
gonna have the
Asteroid
Meg
City is
2.
still in some theaters.
Yeah. So you look at all of those movies, and I'm like, most people are not going to look at Haunted Mansion as being anywhere near their top three.
Yeah,
So
no.
if you are at best your fourth choice for somebody to watch your movie, and it's already like in your opening weekend alone, it's only going to get worse from here, because yes,
I
we're still in
really
the summer
have
month.
a lot of questions about the marketing choices of this movie. Like, I don't know why they decided to put it in theaters, slated against everything else that was in theaters. Like, it just feels like a massive misstep, but
Hmm.
it makes me wonder, like, if they knew they were going to take a massive loss. Like,
I think you're right. You're onto something there, because this is the movie that I believe was announced while Bob Chapek was still like in charge of the company.
yeah.
And back then they were all about like, let's keep pushing, and we want to do these Disney ride movies, we want to do these remakes, we want to do like 8 Marvel projects a year. It was about quantity over necessarily quality.
Yeah.
And they have committed $150 million to this movie in just production budget alone. But then I noticed that the marketing for this was very understated. They put out a few trailers, they had some promotions here and there, but by no means did they really market this movie well enough to try to get it an audience that it would probably have needed. But they probably did that because they realized this is not a very good movie. And at this point, they're just cutting their losses. So I definitely feel like this is Disney, through their actions on how they released this film, telling us, we know it's not a good movie. We know it's gonna flop.
So this movie actually came out almost exactly. It's been exactly 20 years. The last movie came out in 2003, featuring Eddie Murphy. This movie is way closer to the ride for Disney. I grew up in Florida, so I grew up going to Disney World. This ride has been around for as long as I can remember. Literally, like as long as I can remember.
It's one of the oldest ones. Yeah,
and they've talked about tearing it down so many times, and they haven't. So I also wonder if like they released this movie in hopes to sort of like revive the ride. I don't know if they would do that, but like, I mean, I guess in conjunction, it's like tear it down, build something new, or throw 150 million to try to like, I don't know. Maybe that's me like pulling for straws here, but it feels like it could have just been a, we don't want to spend $5 million tearing this down and building a whole new ride. Why don't we just spend money to do that? I don't know, but we'll see.
I mean, I see where you go, but it wouldn't. Like, that would be a really bad business decision if they're like, oh,
they all seem like bad business decisions. This whole movie seems like a poor business decision.
Right, because I'm like, okay, so if they're gonna avoid hundreds of millions of dollars making a new ride, then why? Then I mean, okay, look, here's the thing. Ultimately, like quite simply speaking, no movie should be wasting $150 million doing anything. It's $150 million is a lot of money. There's like movies like The Dark Knight. There's movies like Logan. Like these are just superhero movies. But I can give you examples of like Oppenheimer, made for $100 million. The most Mission Impossible movies are made for less than 150. There's a lot you can do with that money. And I think that
why do you think this movie cost so much? All the CGI?
There's a lot of CGI in this movie, and I bet you that a lot of that money went towards the cast because like they got
they did have a big cast for this. You guys, I was so shocked. We had cameos from, everyone was famous in this movie.
Jamie Lee Curtis has a role, and then like Jared Leto's playing like the Hatbox Ghost.
We have Winona Ryder who makes a little cameo.
Was like a very little role. I'm like, what?
So small.
I thought she was.
There was one other person that I was like, oh, who was it?
Oh, I'm forgetting. I'm sure like it will. It's probably not worth this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, but we've got like an A-list cast, right? So maybe but that's also a trend I'm starting to realize in a lot of the last movies lately. Like I feel like all the movies we're going to see, I'm like, he was in it, and he was in it, and she was in it, and they were in it. What is this sort of like massive star trend going on right now?
The thing is that a lot of movies do this because they expect to either have that obviously for marketing purposes, your stars sell your movie, but at the same time, I just feel like nowadays people are less and less enamored by A-list casts because you have movies like Babylon and you have movies like Haunted Mansion where you will have a all-star cast, but that doesn't necessarily translate to a great movie. Like Barbie's got an all-star cast, Oppenheimer's got a fantastic all-star cast, but those are also made by two fantastic filmmakers, and that also doesn't mean they're also always going to hit because I think Babylon was made by, I'm forgetting the name of the director, but he has a very good track record, but that movie like went nowhere fast. So
my review of that movie is still very intact with how I feel about the movie. It was a lot. It was a lot. And it was like too much and too long. But yeah, I don't know. I guess also too, like it's the sort of, I guess I disassociate in a way from this because so many movies have so many stars nowadays. It doesn't have the same effect on me.
It's also, you know what it is? When it works well because you're not watching the actors, you're watching their characters. Like if you look at an Oppenheimer, right? You're watching Florence Pugh, you're watching Cillian Murphy, you're watching all of these fantastic actors, but in the heat of the moment, when it's Emily Blunt and Jason Clarke having that intense conversation scene in that like private hearing, like you're not worried about, oh, that's Emily Blunt. No,
Yeah, no.
you are paying attention. Oh, that's
What's going
Oppenheimer's
on?
wife standing up
Yeah.
for her husband.
Mhm.
That's so you're pulled into the story. You're not focused. And these actors have really just, they've become their characters in the movie. They're they're doing a fantastic job acting, like, doing their job. They're not acting as themselves, they're playing a character. In movies like Haunted Mansion, what you find is it feels like Rosario Dawson just showed up to the set and just did her thing, and you're just watching Rosario Dawson. You're not watching her character. You'll notice that I keep mentioning the actor's name but not the character names, because to
Do
me,
you
quite
even know the
frankly, I
characters'
don't remember
names?
the characters' names. Yeah, like Keith Stanfield. Oh yeah, I was watching
That
him. Or
makes
Tiffany
sense.
Haddish. She was just doing her normal routine. Or Owen Wilson just played Owen Wilson. His character was so vague that he just randomly drops like half into the movie. Oh, I'm not a real priest. I just put this costume on from a Halloween store. And I'm like, okay, well, great. So if the writers put this little thought into the character, I don't. Yeah.
No. But I will say that after watching Barbie, after watching Oppenheimer, after watching like all of these big movies, it was kind of nice to walk into a movie and just be like, I have no expectations from this. It met my zero expectations from this. I got a couple laughs out of it, and I walked out with a light heart. I think sometimes that's just how you have to approach some of these movies. I do wish it would have just been put on streaming, because like I feel that way about some movies, right? Because it just feels like a clean slate kind of show, and I can just watch this and then move on with the rest of my day.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be in the theaters. I don't necessarily recommend you guys going into the theaters and seeing it. But if you want a movie where it just feels like, oh, it's a Sunday, I just want something easy to watch that'll make me giggle a couple times, this is a movie for you today.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
No, that's a fair comparison. Yeah. My only thing with this would be, and I'll probably like end on here, is look at what Pirates of the Caribbean did for Disney, right? Like that set of movies became like their flagship franchise for a decade. And it was so popular. Those movies were so much of a hit with audiences that they, like you said earlier before the show, they went and changed the rides to match with the movies. And we have seen that same effect with the Marvel comics because of the popularity of the MCU and the casting of Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, who historically had been like this white, Caucasian character in the comics. Because of how popular the movie iteration of the character has been, they changed Nick Fury and the stories that they're telling with Nick Fury. Like some of the new comic storylines are more in line with what you're seeing with like the Black Widow character in the movies and stuff. So when it's done right, the original medium and where that's adapted from will adjust to the movies. And the big thing about Pirates of the Caribbean was when you go to an amusement ride, right? Like there's still a lot of suspension of disbelief that you have to do to kind of really absorb, because you're still left to imagine a lot of what the ride is showing you. Like we unfortunately don't live in a world where you can just put on VR goggles and then have this complete out of body experience. These rides still have a limit to how much immersion they can give you. So similar to like what Pirates of the Caribbean did, they said, oh, the world of the Pirates of the Caribbean that the amusement ride promises, we're going to give that to you. This world of pirates and high seas adventures and like real pirate ships and real British, like Dutch and East India Company and all of that clashing.
But you also have to look back at these movies. They were so good.
Yes.
Like, I think too many people are looking, too many like CEOs of MCU, the DCU, and Disney are overhead saying, what's going to make us money? Not what's going to make us money because it's a really good movie. Like, I feel like everything is just being approached from like such a...
It's like a product. It's content. It's not stories. Right. Yeah.
It's making me like, I don't want to watch anything right now because I honestly feel like I just want to get back to reading books again, because I'm getting so sick of the storytelling in movies being so copy paste. It makes me, quite frankly, it makes me bored, but also just like it's exhausting having to watch the same over and over and over again. It's like, I know how that's going to end.
Right.
Before I even start the movie. And I'm like, what's the point? What is the point?
Yeah.
So
and that's the one thing that I wish that with this movie, Haunted Mansion, that look, we already got the first Haunted Mansion that was
Yeah.
kind of like what this one was. They were like, oh, there's this Haunted Mansion, a bunch of people show up, and then they go on this like crazy adventure. And whether it's closer to the ride or not closer to the ride, what
This
I would have
does look,
liked,
it's way closer to the movie. I don't know if we already talked about that. There are literal scenes from this movie that are scenes from the ride. So you go
definitely.
through on the ride. It, like actually, Dan and I watched it back. Like
Yeah.
there's a full ride clip on YouTube,
Yep.
just because it's been a long time since I've been on the ride, and I
Yeah.
literally was like rewatching it. I was like, holy crap! Like whole rooms are whole scenes in the movie. So
Yep.
they did kind of a cool thing with that. But getting back to what you were
That's
saying,
fine, but like I would have liked for this to feel like a period piece that really brought a idea or like the world that the Haunted Mansion ride promises to life.
mm,
You know,
yeah,
like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies did. Because here's the thing, what the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are, you can never get at the amusement park ride simply because
mm-mm,
like you would have to go out on the ocean on a real pirate ship and go
mm-hmm,
back 300 years in time, so you got to escape into the world that the amusement ride promised, right?
yeah,
Like kind of like if you go to the world of Pandora at Disney World, you don't all of a sudden go into the world of the movie, but you get like the best representation of that you can in real life. But you still need to watch the movie to truly explore this out of this world adventure that Pandora and Avatar movies are
yeah,
all about. So similarly, I think like if this movie kind of felt like maybe like the Death on the Nile or Murder on the Orient Express or a Haunting in Venice, I think is the new one coming out this year, where it's a period movie. These characters are not like some modern day characters who are like half poking fun at the craziness of this haunted mansion while also like crying and taking the whole thing seriously. You won't get that tonal mismatch. Instead, you will get something where the world that the movie promises is everything that the ride gave you a preview of,
mm,
it's a wholly unique experience that's completely immersive, and it's entirely expansive based on what the ride is about. And I just think like that's the best approach. And Disney's got an example of that in Pirates of the Caribbean. So if they ever want to adapt one of their rides into a movie again, I think they need to lean into what they did with Pirates of the Caribbean rather than what they've done with the Haunted Mansion. That's how I would
yeah. I
approach it.
agree, one
Yeah.
thousand percent.
Well, hopefully, hopefully the movie will make a little bit of its money back, because 150 million is a lot of money to have spent on this
Too
movie, which
crazy. Yeah,
I think it would be lucky to get close to that number at the box office. So it's definitely going to lose money, but
yeah.
we'll see. I mean, if you guys went and saw this movie, let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. Did you compare it to the original one with Eddie Murphy? How does it compare to the ride for you? Leave us a comment below, like, and subscribe, of course. That always helps us out. We continue to review movies every week. Secret Invasion just finished airing its 6 episode run. And now begins that time of the year where everybody is once again asking, is now the time to reboot the MCU? Because Secret Invasion happens to be the latest of what seems to be just an ongoing string of projects that's underwhelming. It seems to either lack a sense of overall direction, or certainly it feels like we're in this post Endgame lull where the MCU doesn't quite
Mm,
know where it wants to go. So, I mean, let me start by asking you this, Angelina. Did you actually watch Secret Invasion? Did you even hear
no,
that it was going
I
on?
don't even know what it is.
Okay.
It's
So
like I don't even know what it is.
and so I'll give you a quick summary, but like I think just the
Okay,
fact that you didn't even hear about it
I'm
is
like,
a good,
huh?
because this is where I think the MCU, when it was at the peak of its powers, even people who weren't like avid fans of Marvel knew what was going on. They were like, "Oh yeah, that
Mm,
Captain America movie that's coming. Oh yeah, Civil War. Yeah, I know what it's about. The airport
yeah.
fight." Like people knew that even if they weren't like even if they didn't know all the details. So Secret Invasion is a show where it's adapting the comic book story of the same name, where the Skrulls, which we saw in Captain Marvel, like the green looking aliens, they were kicked off their own planet by the Kree, which were the blue looking aliens. And so basically they were refugees in Captain Marvel. And so Nick Fury, Sam Jackson's character, he basically promised them a planet in Captain Marvel. And so now, like 20 odd years later, because the Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s, Nick Fury has gone through, the Avengers and all of that stuff. The world has almost, the blip and everything. And
Yeah.
so he's got a bit of PTSD because he got blipped and then he came back. And so they kind of explored that in the show. But the central focus of the story is that the Skrulls, there's a faction in the Skrulls that is mad at Fury for basically never finding them a planet for their species, these millions of Skrulls, who are basically at this point without a planet and they're refugees. And so they want to now take over Earth and make that their planet. And they're like, humans are destroying this planet anyway, so we might as well, just turn up the heat and we're going to do a better job of taking care of this planet, and we need a home, might as well be Earth. So the whole point of the show is that, it's a little bit of a what is it, the Body Snatchers kind of a spy political thriller where the Skrulls can shapeshift into anybody. So, any Skrull could look like anyone. So they seemingly have infiltrated like these world leaders. And like if you remember War Machine, like Rhodey, Iron Man's best friend, we find out, and spoiler alert for anybody who has not watched this, but like Rhodey is a Skrull too, as we find out. But ultimately where the show goes, it's very underwhelming because by the end of the show, it seemed, it just felt like there was this one bad actor who ultimately ended up getting killed off by the end of the show, and that's it. So you walk away from the show really without any kind of like significant story development. And if you are yawning at that description, then I will tell you will probably turn the show off after the first few episodes.
Yeah, no.
So my question to you becomes like, having me describe that and then looking at the recent output of the MCU, whether it's Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think Volume 3 was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But outside of that, things like She-Hulk or like, Moon Knight, which couldn't stick the landing. There's so many projects that, and even like Hawkeye or Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I kind of like Hawkeye, but it was like take it or leave it. She-Hulk, I watched like 2 episodes of, and I was just like, no.
It wasn't.
And then
I
actually was rewatching the MCU. Yeah, I was rewatching the MCU. I watched WandaVision. I watched so I watched it all the way through, right? Like all of the major shows and everything. It took me a few months to do it, but I had surgery, like I had time. I just got really exhausted after Doctor Strange.
Multiverse of Madness. Yeah.
I loved me some Stranger Things, guys. That's not what we're talking about here. Doctor Strange, after that I had to take a break. I was just so like, oh God, it's the same story over and over again. And then you have like Endgame, and obviously some of our favorite superheroes are finito after Endgame. And so it's like emotionally exhausting. It's also just like, it's kind of the same story over and over and over again, and nothing pivotal is happening after Endgame. So Doctor Strange was like good, but also I have questions because it's so contradictory of WandaVision, and I liked WandaVision, but like, where is Vision? Where is he? It's just like, I have so many questions, and so I needed to take a break. Because it just wasn't.
Because like Vision, at the end of WandaVision, like it seems like Scarlet Witch has kind of gone through her recovery. Like Wanda Maximoff is coming to be at peace with where she is, and then they show this one scene at the end, this cutaway, like this post-credit scene at the end of the series, which is like, oh, she found the Darkhold and she's actually now becoming evil. And then when you start Doctor Strange into Multiverse of Madness, she's completely evil by that point. So it's a little jarring that, after spending so much time investing in her story, you completely disregarded all of that progress she made as a character. But also, if you did not watch WandaVision, you would be totally lost at the start of Doctor Strange, because you'd be like, wait a second, what? Because the last time we saw her, she was with the Avengers helping save the world. Like, what the heck happened? So
what happened?
And then the Vision, like they have this, this new version of Vision at the end of WandaVision. So not the one that we are familiar with, who died in the Avengers movies, but then we get like this new body, some like who's kind of like a fresh beginning, but like he is like, I'm gonna go find myself. But he shows up nowhere in Doctor Strange, and so I don't know if that romance, that history between Wanda and Vision is ever going to be revisited again. It's one of those things where, again, like you said, it just feels so scattered and there's nothing significant happening. And whenever, like even Secret Invasion, it just feels like another PTSD show where the world of the MCU is still just recovering or seemingly traumatized by the events of Avengers, Endgame, and Infinity War. And they just can't seem to be able to move past those ideas or establish something new that is significant that isn't tied to what has happened before. And it just, after a while, I think, like, and it also, I think, reflects on where the world is today. Because we're coming out of the pandemic, and it feels like people are finally ready to be like, I'm done talking about the pandemic. I just want to, at this point, move forward.
Yeah.
And it's, so I think the MCU having this very dour tone, this holding on to the past, it just starting to become a drag on the continuity. So yeah, and then, the X-Men, we keep getting promised that we're going to get X-Men, but like they're nowhere to be found. And there's, for the very few highlights we get every once in a while, like Miss Marvel or Shang-Chi, now the sequel to Miss Marvel, I don't know if there's going to be a season 2. She's going to be in the Marvels movie, but that's not her movie per se. She's part of the movie. And then Shang-Chi, the sequel, is probably not going to happen for years because the director of Shang-Chi is working on the next Avengers movie. So I just don't. And then, like you said, there's no overall direction. Like back in the like the halcyon days of the MCU.
It was all leading up to Endgame.
Exactly.
And then Endgame happened, and I just don't understand how, like, it took so many years. Like, why didn't they start thinking past that? They had the time,
right?
They had the drive, they had everything at their, like, they had everything there to think past and forward, and they didn't, which is weird to me. Like, did they really just think like, hey, we're done with the money, we're gonna stop now?
And
like, what?
I mean, they say that they have plans, like, and then all these phase things, but here's one thing that I have always said, which I think is a lot of people don't take seriously because they're like, oh, well, of course, it's the opposite is true. But I don't think the MCU has ever been as well planned out or as well connected as people give it credit for. And while Kevin Feige is a genius for having, gotten us this far, I do think there's been a lot of luck on his side and a lot of, good filmmakers who have come in and done a good job while working within the limits of what they've been given.
And I definitely think you see that because you have to think back to like Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea what was going on back then. And they completely act like that movie never even happened because they recast one of the characters as Captain America. They like literally act like it never happened. That they might, which is so funny.
That was a Fox movie, right? So like I bet you that then when they do bring in the Fantastic Four into the MCU, they're probably gonna do like some multiverse angle where they're gonna tie it into those Fantastic Four movies.
And just like they did with Spider-Man?
Yeah, exactly. Like a gimmicky thing where they're like, oh, like here comes Jessica Alba and like
I feel like they have to. I loved Jessica Alba.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, sorry. So it's always so funny to me because it's like they really had no direction until after Iron Man. And you can even see in the first Iron Man, they're very careful about what they talk about because like they didn't know. So really until Iron Man 2 came out, that's when everything starts picking up speed and you get all of these other like connecting pieces. But it's still, well, I don't know. I think you're right. I think honestly, they haven't planned it out as well as they should have. And maybe that's because there's too many seats at the table. Like, I'm sure it's like a constant argument of like, well, no, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this, we should do that. And then you have each of the script writers. Like, I'm sure that there are way too many seats at the table to really have a actual conversation about this stuff. But at this point, it's truly just at their own expense. And I don't understand the why.
I think part of the reason is back in the early days, they were just working on make each project really good, and that gives us the ability to do the next thing. And then they kept building on top of each movie and got to the Avengers, and then things just kept getting better and better. And they kept delivering on the quality side of the story so that they had the chance to keep doing more and more. What has happened, I think, of late is they've established this really big writer's room that let you reference. And because of simply the volume of projects that they're putting out, Kevin Feige, who used to have creative control and oversight over everything, and he was still like probably working 7 days a week, 15-hour days. There's just no way today that he can give that kind of oversight and that kind of have that kind of control where it's one singular vision that's directing everything that's happening in the MCU, because there's just too much going on. So what you tend to have happen is like like a show like Secret Invasion happens, then the director of the or the main producer, the showrunner says, "Oh yeah, Rhodey was probably a Skrull since Civil War. Yeah, we'll go with that." And then without necessarily really putting in the thought behind, oh, so now the audiences are supposed to believe that Rhodey in Endgame, when Tony Stark is there dying, and he's like, comes up to him and he says, "Hey, it's gonna be okay now," and they have that really emotional moment. And now we're supposed to believe that Don Cheadle, who played that earnestly as Rhodey, we were meant that he was a Skrull. So it kind of like it spits in the face of the audiences that you have emotionally invested themselves in your franchise for so long, when you decide to retcon something simply because you wanted to have that shock value in a show like Secret Invasion, which clearly does not mean nearly as much to the audiences emotionally as something like Avengers Endgame did. So I think at this point, they're just damaging their brand by trying to somehow tie these. I'm like, don't retcon anything, move forward, like stop living in the past. I'm tired of them talking about the blip. I'm like, it happened, I get it, like this is where we are today, but like Captain America Brave New World is going to be all about more repercussions of the blip. And right now, after watching Secret Invasion, I'm just less excited about that movie, because I'm like, that movie could have been a new start for the character, but now it's just going to be rehashing everything we've already seen before.
Well, looking at the MCU and what it's happening, like, what is the timeline for all of this? And obviously, everything is affected by the strike, too. So it's like, realistically, what is the next project we're going to get? What is it? Where are we going?
Well, I think, like, the next...
Like, it feels like they have so many projects slated, but, like, nothing's finalized.
Yeah, it's completely a mess at this point, because there's, like, movies like Blade that have gotten, like, 5 false starts, and Mahershala Ali at this point was announced as the new Blade 5 years ago, I think. So I don't know when that movie is ever going to happen, because they hired a new writer and then the writer's been on strike and then the movie got shut down.
Can you imagine getting cast in a role, aging 5 years, and then still having to play this role that you booked 5 years ago?
Yeah,
I could lose my mind.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, these guys have to get into really good shape. So they're like, or even like Deadpool, right? Deadpool was in the middle of filming Deadpool 3, and then Hugh Jackman came back as to play Wolverine, which is I think it would be great to finally see those two guys on screen with Ryan Reynolds. But now that movie that got shut down, we don't know how many months is gonna, the actor strike is gonna last. So Hugh Jackman is gonna have to get back into like Wolverine shape again.
Well, not back. You just have to stay in shape.
Well, stay in shape.
It's like,
but like
at that point, you can't let it go.
No, but you like the amount of,
but like you can't let it go.
No, but the amount of work that they put in to get because if you've seen like his routine before, he's not just like staying in shape. He's getting jacked.
No, I know.
Like
you have to eat like 5,000 calories a day. You're eating like weird stuff. I was on the men's rowing team in college. I understand.
So like at his age. Like it's can you imagine the toll that it takes on your body, especially if you're gonna because here's the thing, there's no end in sight right now.
But I'm more worried about like what he does too, because he's been consistently either filming a movie or on Broadway, and this seems like the best opportunity for him to go back to Broadway. And he's like waiting around to see if they're gonna film this role that's now like, it's like
he was in London filming when the strike started, and so they're like, well, we can't do anything now. Man. Well,
so yeah, it's a little.
And then like Disney had to push back all their Avengers movies, like the Avengers, Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, which I sincerely hope at this point that if they at least start considering rejigging some of their plans, and then hopefully one of these new Avengers movies ends up being a complete reset, and then we start anew. Like we start with either a soft reboot or a full hard reboot, because it's just not working right now.
It opens up a really interesting topic. You're sort of like talking about this superhero fatigue, right? So DCU and the MCU seem to be in like the same spot as a whole for the first time in like 10 years, if not more, like 15 years. Like, and so now it's like opening up bigger conversations about like, is this the optimal time for the DCU, or is it
You're right.
bad?
It's really interesting, because at a time when DC movies are barely making back their budgets at the box office, the MCU is struggling to put up good numbers too. So everybody's asking the question, like, is superhero fatigue real? Which I think that superhero fatigue is real in some ways, in the sense that because we're getting a lot of subpar projects, people are getting tired of subpar projects. If everything was hitting it out of the park, like if every movie was like the Batman, or if every movie was like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or, then everybody would love it. Like, or if Miss Marvel and WandaVision was the kind of standard that we were getting from every show, or if Doom Patrol, which is a fantastic DC show on HBO Max or Max, if that was the quality we were getting from everything, I think people would be into it. The problem seems to be that right now we're getting a lot of quantity, but we're just not getting the quality. And so what I worry about with the DCU, that's going to be a whole new rebooted version of DC, is that if they come out the gates with Superman Legacy in 2025, and that movie ends up being something that underperforms, that doesn't deliver on expectations, which will be very high, then I think that might kill like the new DCU in the crib. Like, and that's why the question that I've been wondering is superhero fatigue gonna kill the new DCU in the womb before it even takes off? Because, for example, the Blue Beetle's coming out in a month. And so in August, Blue Beetle is meant to be the first DCU character, but supposedly that movie's not going to count in the new DCU.
But also from the trailer, it's giving Marvel. Did you feel the same way?
It's a little bit, but like honestly, that for a DC movie feels refreshing to me, because I really like it's the Latino the family, and I like the family overtones. I was actually laughing really hard in the second trailer when like the grandma grabs the huge bazooka gun, and then and
actually I
and Jaime's like, Mama, like, and then she's just, I'm like, okay, I'm in for that kind of stuff, because it's like the movie hopefully will have fun with it, so it won't take itself too seriously. Because like I said, like,
I think that's kind of where DC goes, and that's really one of the primary differences between DC and Marvel, right? Is that DC, the characters are darker, their character arcs are darker, the villains are darker, it's supposed to be a little bit more real, it's supposed to be a little less hopeful. This feels very much like a Marvel take on Blue Beetle, which is interesting. So we'll see. It'll be a good movie, but will it be too Marvel-y?
Yeah, I hope not, because I would say that there's no such thing as too Marvel-y as long as you're telling a good story. Because if it's too campy and that's all it is, then it's not going to be a good movie. But if it is a fun, heartfelt story that also happens to be funny and self-aware, then I think we will be fine. Because Blue Beetle, if the Latino community comes out to support it and it has a good word of mouth, it could do what Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse did, which is it had a decent opening, but then people kept coming back to watch it. And so over time, it kept doing better and better. And I think it made like $500 million, which is fantastic for a movie that had a budget of $100 million. So I sincerely hope that this new DCU doesn't, get killed off before it even starts because of superhero fatigue. But ultimately, it will depend on quality. I think as long as they're telling quality stories, they're telling hopeful stories, because I think the world is looking for optimism today in their movies and what they enjoy at the box office or at home. And I don't think we are in a place where people want to see dark, dreary futures. They want to see something that's light, that's engaging them, that's heartfelt. And that's why Top Gun Maverick and Barbie are doing so well, because those movies are giving you something where you get to escape the day-to-day,
which is what good storytelling is supposed to be, right? Like, with whether or not it's a novel or whether or not it's a film, it's supposed to sort of like take you out and make you think and absorb somebody else's universe. So I mean, with that being said, how are you guys feeling about Blue Beetle? Let us know. We definitely want to see what you guys are thinking about the MCU and DCU reboot. So remember to comment, share, like,
hit the like button.
All those things. Okay, so we're talking about the SAG strike, right? All right. So nothing's really happening, but everything's really happening. It's basically where we were last week, except SAG is like fully giving the go-ahead for lots of indie movies. We've got like a list up on the SAG website telling you who you can and cannot work with. It's not affecting everything in the industry, but most shows, most movies, most everything in relation to non-indie projects are on a complete hold. So
it's So like a studio like A24, which like reached a deal independently with SAG, like they're doing their stuff, like they're fine, but so they're not part of the AMPTP, so they were able to negotiate and they accepted the terms that SAG offered, which is fantastic. And now we have
Yeah.
like other movies that are getting waivers. Like I think Steven Spielberg's daughter, her directorial debut, I forget her name, Destry Allen Spielberg.
It's kind of a good name. I didn't know her name.
It's like a
It's a good name.
it's a good name. It's also a long name. Her directorial debut, Please Don't Feed the Children, is one of the 5 movies that have been given this waiver from SAG, so they can continue to cast and like maybe work towards production. You've got a Guy Ritchie movie that's also gonna be doing that. So SAG seems like what they're doing here is they're telling the industry, look, we are here looking for equal terms from and fair terms to have proper working conditions from the NPTP. However, we're not here to be, to put down the industry as a whole. So if you guys are willing to work with us on fair terms, then we're going to give, then let's do that. Let's work and let's keep people in their jobs. Let's make sure we can continue to earn a living, which I think is a great thing for SAG to do because it puts them in the right in the public eye. And it also puts more pressure on the AMPTP to come back to the table and hopefully, decide that whichever direction we're going to go, whether you're going to punt some of the issues till the next one or come up with a deal on the things you can agree on. I hope
I think that's really where it is like the AMPTP is kind of like, it seems like writing out on public perception that like the actors are just being divas.
Right.
Oh yeah, like let's just laugh off the actors. It's like, no, we all want to work. We want to make sure that people can pay their rent. That's why we're here to begin with. So I definitely think Fran Drescher is doing a marvelous job. Actually, I'm honestly shocked at how brilliant and some of how thoughtful a lot of her speeches have been. It's really, I feel like she's doing a really great job. I fully support her in every way. I still have not gone picketing. I'm maybe the worst actor on planet Earth. I have to go. I have to go before I leave for Colorado. My hair. Oh my goodness. So there's that. Everybody's out there striking. There are Hollywood names out there every day out the picket lines.
I saw Colin Farrell on social. Hours. Yeah, he was out there. Like every day I'm seeing some like new big name that's out there showing support, which is fantastic.
Other than that, there's really no big movement. Like there's no big announcements. It's really just they're giving out indie vouchers. SAG has said that vouchers were available the very first day of the strike, and they have received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications for these vouchers to like move forward with filming, casting this. Well, not filming. I think they're allowed to continue with casting. I think they're allowed to continue with press, but nobody's allowed to actually move forward with filming during the strike.
There were a couple of movies that got exceptions to continue filming that were already in production. I don't know about any that are about to go to production, but like A24, for example, because they have a deal with SAG, they can keep making their movies, which so right now we still have a lot of studios out, like the big studios, the MPTP studios, they have a lot of content in the pipeline, so they're not going to feel the effects of this until a few months later. But right now they're considering moving movies like Aquaman, Dune, and even like the Marvels potentially, because if they can't promote it, and if they have to if they feel like they're gonna write this thing out until next year, then I think we're gonna end up in some, because even if you don't feel it like in the next 6 months, for us as consumers, we're gonna start to feel it like 2 years from now, when we're gonna have these huge gaps because things were shut down for so long. Now it's just taking them a long time to catch up on the backlog, like during the COVID pandemic. But I mean, here's hoping that things continue to go well, and maybe this will lead to a renaissance of indie movies. For all we know, like maybe this is what we're out of it.
I think I love that so much, because I'm honestly so sick of watching
even even if that means that because the studios, their movies are shut down, and then because these indie movies will continue production, hopefully, if that means that a lot of those indie movies end up getting picked up for distribution by the bigger studios, then I mean, bravo to all those indie filmmakers who might have more opportunity in this like weird twisted way. They're gonna find a way to get distribution with big studios and hopefully end up having careers made out of that. So we're yet to see a lot of that.
There's a lot left to come, but just also because I think, Dan, earlier you mentioned, you were like, I think everyone thinks everything stopped moving. That's not exactly what
Right.
happened. It's so like the entertainment industry, especially here in LA, as an actor, is really split into commercial
Mm-hmm.
and theatrical. Commercials are still rolling. I was just in an ESPN commercial this past week. They're still filming. They're still doing their stuff. They have everything slated. We were getting ready for an NFL project, which is fun. That's all still rolling. Castings are going out. I'm auditioning. That's theatrical is what is like not moving.
Yeah, if you go to like the Warner Brothers lot, it's like empty. It's like a ghost town. Yeah.
Yeah, I had one audition for like a low budget indie movie this past week. I have one more that is due tomorrow. Those are filming. That's not where anybody makes their money, but that's where people make their start and the reels and everything else. But that's it. So all of the like big movies and all of this and all of that, no. Like Winning Time is finally coming out on HBO. I actually did like featured background on that show for months. Like they wanted me there like every day for months, and I was like, no. But that's finally coming out, and it just feels like all of those jobs are gone. So the entertainment industry is hurting. People are hurting. Economically, I think LA is going to start really hurting. New York really going to start hurting, especially because New York is where a lot of those crime dramas are filmed.
A lot of TV.
And that's a big part of the economy.
And Chicago.
All of that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chicago, New York. Atlanta is really the home of like a lot of movies.
A lot of the Marvel projects get shot down there too. Yeah. Yep. And London, like I saw that the UK is also big because like there's it's a bigger part of their economy. All these movies that are filming, Deadpool 3 was filming in London, and that all got shut down. So it's affecting everybody for sure.
LA, luckily, it's like we have commercials, so we can still start rolling with this.
Yeah, and I mean,
if I couldn't do either, I'd probably be crying right now.
I think like Gavin. I heard that Gavin Newsom, the governor in or is he the governor? Oh no, is he the state governor or is he the mayor of? Gavin Newsom's the governor of California, right? Yeah. So I think is going to start to get involved in this because I mean I think he's trying to position himself as a presidential candidate in the next cycle, but he will probably try to like mediate it. What kills me about that
is I don't know anybody in California that's like
his numbers are. Yeah, he's not really. But for example, if he can put on his resume that he helped mediate something like this, then I think that will be a big plus sign for him. But yeah, we'll see where this goes. I mean, we're gonna keep talking about this and see, and if there's any updates on the SAG side, on the WGA side, on the MPTB side, we'll keep covering it. And as always, if you are going out picketing, it's hot out there. Stay hydrated and make sure to take care of yourself. And we sincerely hope that you're finding ways to still earn a living in this time. And if you have any comments for us, any experiences you'd like to share, you can leave them in the comments below and hit the like button and subscribe. That helps us keep doing more of this, and we hope to keep bringing the updates as they come. So now let's just quickly look ahead to the next week in movies. We've got 2 movies coming out. They're not quite Barbenheimer different from each other, but you have the Meg 2. So let's talk about the Meg 2 first. The Meg 2, The Trench. You got Jason Statham, and he's coming back in probably what's going to be another very wildly over the top outing, let's say, where I think he was physically fighting this huge shark in the first movie, where there's some ridiculous scenes. I think he was like drop kicking the shark or something. So I wonder what else they're gonna get up to in the second one. What are you excited about the Meg 2?
I saw the previews during Oppenheimer, and I immediately was like, I'm going to go see this movie because it's going to be the stupidest movie I see all year. I don't even know if stupidest.
It's not quite Sharknado bad, but
it's gonna be really bad, but it's gonna be funny bad, and I'm excited for the funny bad.
Yeah, it's kind of like
it's like super bad.
Exactly, it's almost like the Haunted Mansion, except but they're gonna turn up the Goofy, and they're not gonna care that they're gonna everybody in the movie is gonna take themselves seriously, but you're just sitting here. It's like gonna be like Batman and Robin, like that kind of bad. Hopefully,
but it'll be good. I'm excited. We also have Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out,
Yeah.
right?
So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what was it called? Mutant Mayhem. So basically like the last time we got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or TMNT movie, it was the Michael Bay movies, and with Megan
Yeah.
Fox and everything. I watched the first one, fantastic. I actually had a really good time with it. The second one kind of fell off a cliff in terms of story and everything. But now, like, they've come back here, and Paramount's like, saying, okay, we're going back to animated turtles, and the style of animation they're using is kind of like a halfway between the Spider-Verse style and then stop motion, so like the Lego movies. So I'm interested in seeing how the animation style does. It's got like 100 reviews basically on Rotten Tomatoes already, and it's sitting in the 90s. So it looks like people are really enjoying this. So I'm very curious to see how it looks.
Dan asked me beforehand, like, if I would go see this movie, and I told him absolutely not. So y'all are gonna have to convince me to go see it, because I will not volunteer for that one. I'm good. It's just something about the animation and something about the trailer I saw. I'm just like, that's not my movie. It's just not my movie. And I just don't really want to spend the time of my day watching said movie.
I'm not, I'm not the biggest TMNT fan in the world, but I'm always willing to give them a shot, because I think these movies, like, it's one of those ensemble things where you have like at least 4 or 5, if not 6 main characters in this movie, and as long as their chemistry and how they interact back and forth is good, I don't care if the story conventions are similar, because it's the same Turtles story, generally speaking, that we've seen before. I just want to see them have a good time together, so that me watching them has a good time. And I haven't seen a lot of animated movies this year, even though it's been a year of some really good ones. So I'm actually excited to go out and see this. And who knows? I mean, if this movie does well enough, like what Spider-Verse, the first one, did, then they might, with like Spider-Verse, they might be inclined to make sequels. So there's fans of this franchise still out there, but hopefully this movie doesn't kill the franchise. Hopefully it's like a new start for them. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see we'll go watch, the movies that we have picked out. You're gonna go watch the Meg. I'm gonna go watch the Meg. You're gonna go watch the Meg 2. I'm gonna go watch TMNT. We're gonna come back and share our notes and see which one we liked, which one you didn't. So yeah, it's been a good weekend of movies, record-breaking weekend. It's gonna be hopefully another good week of the movies ahead. And hopefully it's going to be good weather out there as well. It's still in the summertime, get plenty of sun. And it's been nice talking to you about the movies once again. We'll keep doing this.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next time on Oh So Curious. Until then, go out there, have a fantastic week, enjoy some great movies, and come and tell us all about it next weekend. And then we'll keep talking about them. And we got plenty of more to come in August. So lots more to come. Until then, it's been nice talking to you guys.